And welcome back to another episode of the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I'm with Pablo Villagrán from Guatemala, and I'm really excited to have Pablo on the show because he's going to share his experience living in Guatemala City, what Transforming Futures, their nonprofit organization, is doing to help the children of Guatemala, and we're going to dive into all of that. But before we get into our interview with Pablo, please go to YouTube, subscribe to the Brett Snodgrass channel, and make sure you click on the bell so you can get the notifications when we have new episodes come out. And make sure you like this episode with Pablo Villagrán from Guatemala. And with that, welcome to the show, Pablo. What's going on, man?
Hi, Fred. Thank you for having me on your show. So excited to be with you here.
No problem. I've been looking forward to this for many weeks now. I always love.
Me too.
I always love just sitting down with you. You have the most humblest heart, I think, that I've ever met. You and just the people with Transforming Futures. I appreciate just your servant's heart. Just every day you get up, you serve. Really are the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, man. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It means a lot coming from you. I appreciate that. We do our best here in Guatemala.
Awesome. Well, Pablo, I want to just kind of go over a couple of things, just your highlight reel, number one. And I always kind of, do this with our guests. And so here's Pablo Villagrán's highlight reel. He's the founder and director of Transforming Futures, which is a nonprofit organization that supports nutrition, education, and development of children that are living in extreme poverty in Guatemala, mainly Guatemala City. And Pablo, with that, you have an education degree, or not an education, but you have a communications degree, master's in marketing, and you went to college, and it sounds like you have had a pretty good life. And before we get into talking about Transforming Futures, really just like to talk about Pablo. So kind of talk to our audience here, like, what was it like growing up for you? What was your family like? And take us through your adventure.
Well, thank you, Brad. I'm the middle kid. I have a younger sister. I have an older brother. My mom and my dad, we grew up together. Unfortunately, my dad recently passed away, but he was an amazing, amazing man of God. I had the privilege to go to a private school, and I said a pretty normal, childhood. I went to college for my communication master's, and I recently finished my communications degree, and then I recently finished my master's. But I said in Guatemala, I am one of the privileges. I had the privilege to go to school. I had the privilege to have my parents that provide for us, that protect me. And just a normal kid growing up. I love sports. I like running and swimming. It's part of one of my passions. And I enjoy doing that by myself. Actually, it's my thinking moment of the day. When I'm running, when I'm thinking, when I'm processing what I'm doing. So I grew up in a Christian home. I was privileged to do that too. And that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So you said you were a middle child, right? And you had.
I was.
So there was 3 kids, brother, sister.
Yeah, I have an older brother and my younger sister.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like to be a middle child? Was it like, did you feel like you were forgotten about? Like you didn't know where you fit in? Yeah. I don't know. There's so many books out there about, the birth order, and they have the middle child. So what was it like for you?
No, I think I was the most independent of all of them, because my dad was all about my sister. My mom was all about my brother, and I was the kid in the middle. So we all kind of, it's exciting because you just gotta do your own thing all the time, and it kind of makes you more independent. So I started working early, like when I was 14 years old, and none of my siblings worked. I mean, my older brother didn't work when he was 14, but I just felt like I wanted to. And my dad was like, okay, you go ahead, you go work. And I enjoy, just doing things by myself. So I think being a middle child kind of makes you more independent in a way.
Yeah, for sure. What was your very first job? So you went out and worked. What was the first thing you did?
I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but I was like a cowboy for this party place, right? So I was always with kids, and I helped kids, go on their horses, and I did the show with the kids for Christmas. I mean, for birthday celebrations.
Wow! So you had the cowboy hat and everything, cowboy boots.
I did. Yeah, I
That's
loved it
awesome.
though. I ate a lot of ice cream. I had a lot of popcorn, and yeah, it was just fun. It was after work, after school, and they just thought you look like a cowboy, so you might be one of our cowboys here. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And that was my first job.
That is so cool. Did they probably, they might not have had YouTube, but do you have any videos, pictures, anything?
No,
No.
no, and I'm so glad there isn't any record of that because
That is so
not a lot of
cool.
people that now know that about me.
Well, now everybody does.
Yeah,
It's
I
out there in the
know.
world. That is so cool. So you grew up pretty normal childhood. I mean, you didn't
Mhm.
grow up in extreme poverty. Your parents sound like they both had worked. You got to go to a private
Yeah.
school. Like, you didn't live like some
Mhm.
of the children that you are helping
Mhm.
today, right?
No, no, like I said, I'm one of the exceptions in Guatemala, right? Because more than 50% of the population live in poverty. And from that 50%, half of them live in extreme poverty, right? So that means less than $1 a day. That means you don't know what you're going to eat the next day, or if you're going to have dinner, or if you're going to go to school, or you're just trying to survive. Your parents are doing their best, uh, but even their best is not enough because usually they have a lot of kids in the family. So
Mm.
yeah, like you said, I didn't grow up in extreme poverty, and but I understand it because I live with it, and I go to the communities that they live in extreme poverty, and yeah, I created a lot of compassion for those that are struggling in my country.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard to see what you see every single day and not to have
Mm,
compassion for these
yeah,
children, not to want to serve and to help.
yeah.
And before we really just dive into, I really want to talk about Transforming Futures, how you got connected with Transforming Futures and what that journey was like. But, I have to hit home, like you could be a very, very successful person, especially in Guatemala. You have a bachelor's in communications, a master's in marketing management. Like you could really take that and do really well for yourself, right? Live in a wealthy community in Guatemala, but you have chosen not to, and you've chosen to be a servant and to serve this organization, Transforming Futures, and you even had a job at the United Nations, right? Talk to us
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that, and that's a job you left to kind of help start
I
this
did.
organization.
Yeah, it's like I was working there for a couple of years. It was a great opportunity, and I could really create a career in the United Nations. I was working for the UN Agency for Refugees. So I was working and communicating because I was in the communication department of that agency, communicating stories and data on how people that are fleeing violence and persecution, how they're trying to look for a safe place in Central America. So I used to travel a lot. It was an exciting job, I would say, and there was definitely a good future for me in the United Nations if I would continue to work there. But before I worked in the UN, I worked with I worked in an orphanage, and I worked there for about 6 years. And God really, I was leading mission teams. So I led more than 100 mission teams, and so that brought a lot of perspective on me on really what the need in my country was. So when I was working in the UN, God was really just asking me to step into my purpose. And it was difficult, right? Because I was okay, and I felt like all that things that I saw during that time, it was for something.
Mm.
And the moment I made that decision, my family thought I was crazy. I mean, I got phone calls from everybody saying, "What are you doing? Why are you quitting your job? Like, what's going on?" And I thought I was going into like probably an emotional crisis or something like that. And I just, when that's what you're supposed to be doing, you just got to be bold and do it. And that's what I did. And the moment I stepped into starting transforming futures, it felt so right to me. It felt like I was just stepping into my purpose, right?
Mm.
And so it was almost very fulfilling to me. And every time we have little success or things are going in the right direction, it just confirms this is what I was born. I was born to be and to start transforming futures.
Yeah.
But I want to be real. It wasn't an easy decision for me. But God is supporting that decision. And so that's why I'm like so excited to continue to work, for children that live in extreme poverty and for orphans that are also in institutional care.
That's awesome. I want to just hit home because a lot of guys are in this transition and they're like myself. I mean, I've been in this transition this past year, and we're trying to figure out the direction. We're trying to figure out, how can we live out our purpose? How can we live out, our impact? And when you're out of that season, you're like where you're at and living in your purpose and serving and feeling fulfilled, it's easy to look back and say, wow, that was a great decision. But most guys are really just in that middle, like valley somewhere, and they're just in the middle of it. So how long was it like when you were feeling this calling? You had led some of these mission organizations, these mission trips, and was it a few weeks that you were battling with this? Was this longer than that you're like, I need to do this, but I don't want to, and you're back and forth? Like, what type of time frame was that?
I would say a few months. I was, really thinking about it. I was talking with very wise people too. That's important when you want to make a decision, like people that have a record of good decisions in their lives, and that you can really look up and say, this person can really honestly tell me an advice, and it's not going to be for themselves. It's going to be to help me out in this. Because I felt conflicted, right, between what I could possibly do with my life versus what my purpose is, right? So what I'm doing versus my purpose didn't seem to be in the right or aligned together. And so every person that I went with, and one of them was my mom. And my mom is one of the reasons why I serve others, because she showed me how to serve others by her example. She never told me to do it. I just saw her do it with other people, with people that you wouldn't even like in your home. My mom will take them in the house and we'll be like eating some lunch and we're like, okay, who's this guy, and she's just that kind of person. And one of them was my mom, and then other, good leaders that I have around me. And they said, this is the moment you're stepping into your purpose and you got to take what's yours. And when they told me you got to take what's yours, I was like, or somebody else will, because somebody else might be more willing to take that. I was like, okay, yeah, that really helped me to say, okay, I'm going to step into my purpose. So it was a couple of months. And when I did it, I was scared, but that didn't stop me. It's like, I'm going to be scared, but I'm still going to do it, right? Yeah. That feeling won't stop me. Yeah. And there was uncertainty at some point because it's a transition and things are not completely clear. And we like to have a plan that is completely clear. But we never have the big picture, right? We just have a little bit of it. So we will never have the huge, just big, everything so clear. So things are, as I was walking into the purpose and as I was starting the job, I think things were starting to be revealed to me, and still other things are not completely revealed to me. But I'm just trusting in the process, and it builds your character. I really do. It builds your character. It makes you like, this is it. Like, life is short. Why are you going to be wasting your time when you're not supposed to be doing what you're doing at the moment? And so, so that's why I did it,
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you talked about, you meet with wise people. One of them was your mom, and that's such an amazing example. I call that the modeling approach that your mom, so many times parents tell their kids what to do, but they don't model it. And your mom literally modeled it. She didn't even tell you. She just was the model.
She does it. And I'm not kidding. She will people will call her and say, hey, we're coming from outside the city. Can we stay at your house? How many people? 10. And then one day I show up and there's 10 people in my house. And I'm like, are they staying in the guest room? And my mom's like, no, they're staying with us in my room. I'm going to stay in the guest room. I'm like, why are you doing this? But she shows me that, that's what Jesus would do, and I'm like, okay, I cannot debate with that if you're feeling that way. But like you said, she just models it. She doesn't really tell me what to do. And I think that's one of her legacies. And you can see it in my siblings as well.
Yeah.
That without really saying anything, she's doing things like that.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
So, Pablo, you made this decision. You got wise counsel, and you decided to start and kind of found Transforming Futures. Was Transforming Futures already an organization that you joined? Was it something that? How did you come up with this idea for Transforming Futures?
So like I said, in the time I was doing missions, God placed in my heart the desire to continue to help children in Guatemala. And so we decided, along with my board, I have an amazing board in the United States that supports me with the leadership and the connections and the work that is needed. And so we decided together to start Transforming Futures. So it was, when I moved into Transforming Futures, we're literally taking it off from the ground, starting everything from the ground, and creating systems and programs and everything. So it was just it's something that is born, brand new.
Wow, that's interesting. So is this a pretty young company then? Like, how long has Transforming Futures been around?
We've been around for 2 years.
2 years,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty
young still.
Pretty young company. So you were leading some of these mission trips, and that's how you met some people from America. And they wanted to help. Was this kind of your idea? Was this just a mutual thing? You say, what can we do? What can we start? What can we do to help the children here in Guatemala? Was that how things just kind of started, or?
I think it's a combination of purposes, to be honest, because my purpose one of my programs that I want to really develop is mentoring teen orphans. God really plays that on my heart. When they are 18 in Guatemala, when you live in an institution, they give you an ID, they let you go, and you're on your own, and you don't have parents, you don't have a support system, nothing. And so that was one of my purposes, right? And then some board members as well wanted to continue funding a feeding program that I introduced them to when I was doing missions, which is the feeding program that we're feeding 580 children. So we came together and we're like, but I also want to build schools. And it was almost like all of our purposes and ideas kind of match in one place. And we're like, okay, this is it, then let's do it. So that's how it was born, really.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's just talk about Transforming Futures then, because I know there's some resources out there. Your website is what, transformingfutures.org?
That is correct. Transformingfutures.org.
And you guys can find out more information on transformingfutures.org. They have some amazing videos that really highlight the organization of Transforming Futures. They just came down to an event that I was a part of called The Collective Genius, and they were the sponsored nonprofit organization that we helped raise money for. And that was pretty awesome, Pablo. That was pretty fun, wasn't it? We do some crazy things. We did some games, and this time we dressed up as superheroes because to portray the children of Guatemala as superheroes. Pablo, you won the race, and you were Batman, right?
I was Batman. I love Batman.
We'll have to get a picture. We'll get a picture for that. Put on this video.
Yes, and thank you, Brett, for really allowing that invitation to happen. And everybody in that group was amazing. They were so welcoming to us, and they really just wanted to help. And that is very inspiring to me, because a lot of very successful people were in that room, and you can tell it wasn't all about them. Like, they wanted to do much more for many. And dressing like superheroes to me was really a great idea, because that's how children are in my country. They're superheroes. They survive the most unprecedented situations, and they push through, and they become adults, and they try to do their best. So they're really the superheroes, and that we were honoring them in that event was amazing. And that I got to dress like Batman, it's even better.
That is awesome. Well, let's just talk about, there's a video that really kind of hit home with the hearts of the organization, and it was about a child that grew up in extreme poverty in the area of Guatemala that your organization and the feeding center that is located at. It's one of the largest or I think the largest dump of Guatemala and even Central America, correct?
Yeah, that is
And
correct. Hmm.
so, and it really highlights this child about how they live. So, why don't you just talk to our audience about what is it like to live there? What's the life of a child like in that location?
Yeah, that's an amazing video. You know, we're feeding 580 children in that area. And Ezekiel is one of the videos that you can go on our website and you can check it out. Um, and his story is amazing because he's the oldest of four and he's just 11 and he's taking a lot of responsibility for that age. And so that's how it is to live in that area in extreme poverty. You take adult responsibilities fairly quick, right? Because life doesn't allow you to play around, to be just a child. You really have to just survive. And so when you don't have, you don't know what you're going to eat the next day, when you struggle to go to school because your parents never went to school and you're just trying to follow what they tell you, you become an adult and you're little. That's why they're superheroes, because their strength, their resilience is huge. And so this kid is, the oldest one. And so he goes to our feeding center. He gets food. He comes back home. He feeds his family. And then he goes again and works, and he works to provide to the family. And he's just a little kid. So that's how it is to be a kid in that area. There's a lot of violence around your halls. When COVID-19 hit and people ask for social distancing, well, when you live in extreme poverty, there isn't much social distance. Like, you just live and everybody's so tied together that things really affected the development of the kids. So you can never be demanded to actually respond like a normal kid when your childhood has been full of uncertainty, full of just things that you were not supposed to be living, but you are, and you're pushing through. And I think that's why we love the story of Ezekiel, and we're excited to share many more stories, because we feed, like I said, 580. So there's 580 lives there, and stories that are worth sharing. And
Wow.
and like I keep saying, they're the superheroes of this story.
Yeah. One story that I kind of want to hit home on, and like Pablo said, that video is amazing. It shows Ezekiel, and it just really squeezes your heart. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I noticed, I went to Guatemala in 2019, and I got to know some orphans and some of these children in this feeding center too. And one thing that just kept coming back to me, I have 4 children at home, and they were very much
Mm-hmm.
similar to my own kids, except they didn't have anything to eat, right? And they had to go work and wade through trash. That's what most people do in this particular area. They get recyclable, and then they get paid. I think you said what, $1 a day to get
Mm-hmm.
the recyclables, and they work all day to make that. And it's hard to feed your family, even in Guatemala, off of that, right? And that's what you got. That's why you guys helped, support these families with the feeding center. And I know the feeding center actually has more of a backstory, and it's been going along for some years now. Why don't you talk to us about that? I know there's a lady, Pastora, that helps with the feeding center, and I know she's very much respected in this area. And you guys can see her in the video on transformingfutures.org. But talk to us about the organization of just a feeding center.
Well, thank you. I think, just to give you the context, like you were sharing, the garbage dump is the biggest garbage dump of Central America, right? So a lot of garbage comes every day to that location. And around that garbage dump, there's a lot of communities and a lot of children that are, they're growing up in that area. And like you said, they live in extreme poverty. $1 to $5 is the most they will make working 12 hours a day, right? So they're trying to recycle materials. And in the middle of all that, Pastora Mercedes was born in that environment. And she was an amazing little girl that, like Ezekiel, took responsibility at an early age. So she was responsible for her 4 siblings. And she tells her story. She used to go to homes and, ask the owners of the house if there was any food left that they can share. And when they would say, no, I'm sorry, she will just ask, can I take your garbage out? And people will be like, yeah, just take it out. And then she will try to find leftover food to feed herself, her siblings, take home. And then more kids will join, her group and just kind of go with her, knocking doors and asking people if there was any food left for them to eat. And so when Pastora was little, she understood the need by leaving the need, right? It wasn't like me. She actually was struggling to eat every day. And she made a promise to God. And she said, God, if you give me a house, I will serve you with kids. And God fulfilled that promise. And she got a house and she started the feeding center right at her house. And she was feeding kids. And then she's also running a church. So the church was kind of funding the feeding program. But when you have most of the members of the church are people working in the garbage dump, making $5 a day. So it was difficult for them to sustain that program. And so Pastora, that's when when we crossed paths, I was driving and I saw a lot of kids and my heart was just like, what's going on there? And I went in there and Pastora was there. She introduced me to the feeding program. At that time, I think she was feeding like 200 children. And she said, look, I'm going to have to close this place because there's not more funding for this. And they were literally, I went to the storage. They weren't even expecting me at all, right? Because I was just a visitor. And it was completely empty. And I decided that I was going to become a bridge to provide funds to continue and scale that operation to another level. So she's really the heart of the feeding center. And we're so honored to have her in the leadership of the feeding program. And we've grown now to feed 580 kids. And we are expecting to, with the generosity of people, to add 100 more kids in 2021 as part of our feeding program. Because we cannot demand to children to be educated and to develop if the basic needs of just having a meal is not met. And so that's our goal, that most of the kids in that area can have at least a plate of nutritious meal a day, for sure. Like they know for sure. We just close 2 days a year in Christmas time because there's other people that come for Christmas time and they share meals, and New Year's Eve. Other than that, the feeding center is open. And so children know that that's the place they can go when their parents are struggling with food, which is most of the times.
Wow. So you're saying that they're open every day? Wow.
Monday to Friday, yeah. Over the weekends is when Pastora kind of buys the food and gets ready, but it's Monday to Friday. Yeah.
Wow. And so that's really, you guys provide nutrition for the kids, and you don't just give them candy or chips or whatever. You do provide a nutritious meal for these kids, and they meet that basic need because these families and these children they're just in survival mode, right? And if they didn't have that, if they didn't have that meal, what do you think would happen to a lot of these kids?
Well, a lot of kids in my country die for malnutrition. And I don't want to say they will, but there's a chance that most of them, especially kids that are younger than 5 years old, could develop more disease, can die. And, their parents will really just be a complete disaster because there isn't a certainty of food in there. And when they give them food, also, there is not a lot of education in food. So it's not the most nutritious meal that they're having. So it will be crazy. It will be, I don't like to think about it, but I do sometimes when we're like, okay, this is why we matter. Like, this is what the work that we're doing here matters, because 580 children depend on us to be, to eat, and imagine the burden Pastora carries every day, right? And she makes sure that the meals are the best that we can provide to the kids.
Mm. No, I love that. It's one of my very favorite quotes is from D.L. Moody, who created the Moody Bible Institute, and I talk about this quote a lot, but he says that your biggest fear should not be of failure. It should be at succeeding at something that doesn't matter. And that's what I talk a lot, and really what you guys are doing truly, truly matters. Like you're really saving lives. And if I could be a part of any organization, because we talk about business and organizations a lot on this podcast, is if you could scale and grow something. I mean, what better way to track and to scale lives, like real lives, children's lives, saving lives? You know, if you go from 580 kids to 680 kids in the next year, like how much that is, and that's just the basic nutritional needs. But you go beyond that, right? So Transforming Futures goes beyond that, because a lot of organizations, which is amazing, you're saving lives, and these families and these kids are in survival mode, and they're getting that nutritious meal. But Transforming Futures doesn't want to stop there. They want to continue and really break the chains, right? So talk to us about your other pillars of the organization.
Thank you. So the other pillar for us after nutrition is education. We believe education is the most powerful tool you can give to a child in extreme poverty, and to any child, really. And so we are working in the educational development of 30 children. So what that means is this 30 kids, and we're trying to expand that in 2021 as well, to have more kids in our facilities. Children, most of their parents in the garbage dump, their parents never went to school. So when the kids have homework and, they have to do educational things, parents cannot support them. I mean, they love them, they want to do it, but they just can't. And so that's why we are reinforcement. I mean, we're creating a program that it helps them. And so we hire staff to be full-time with our kids doing their homework, and we're trying to teach them other things as well, like English and computing skills, so that they can start seeing that there's something out there outside the garbage dump, because they almost live in a bubble, right? And so everything they see is what they will copy, right? Is the example that they're seeing, and that doesn't help to break the cycle of poverty, because they want to become what the parents are doing, and the parents are going to the garbage dump, and their grandparents went to the garbage dump, and the grandparents went to the garbage dump. So it's just constant, I'm just doing what my parents are doing. And education can really break that cycle, and can allow them to see outside of that bubble and see that there's so much more they can do. But they also have to believe in themselves, because a lot of them, they have very low self-esteem because they're discriminated, because they live in when you tell them when you live, you're basically living around the garbage, right? So that affects your identity. And part of what Pastora does well is actually tell them who they are in God, and why their lives matter, and why they can do so much more than just helping in the garbage, right? And so we work in that, and because I love education, I really do. We started a new program outside the city, the garbage dump area, in a rural area, where we're building a brand new elementary school for 180 kids.
Wow.
And that is what I love about that program. And I'm going to the school tomorrow. I love going to that site and just see how it's all happening, right? Especially the foundation, the part that nobody really sees, but it's the most important part. I don't know. I just like that. But the part that I like the most is that this project goes beyond my lifetime. This building will continue even if I'm not there, and it will help the educational development of more kids. It doesn't depend on me. It's just somewhere where kids can go in a clean area, in a nice area actually, to get educated, and encourage the community to believe in education as well for their kids. So that's the second part, which is education. And in 2021, we're launching our development part or program, which is the one that is the closest to my heart, which is supporting orphans, and those teen orphans that are coming out of orphanages, and some of them just need an opportunity. That's all they need. I mean, they're ready. They just want to succeed in life, but they just don't have one. And that's what happened. What is happening in 2021.
Wow, that's amazing. So, living in America, sometimes we take so many different things for granted. Pablo, you just came to America, and one of the things that you said, and I asked you this question, I was like, what is it like coming from Guatemala to America? And you said, everything over here just seems so easy, right? And there's so many different things because everything seems so easy that we do take for granted. Number one, I've never had where I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, right? So I do take food and nutrition for granted. Education, you know, I take that for granted, my kids, right? And this is where, you know, the families living in this garbage dump that they can't eat, so their kids have to work, so they don't go to school, and that's the cycle, right? And then they just end up making that $1 a day for the rest of their life, and they have more kids and more kids because they don't practice a lot of that and safe, you know, things. So more kids, and it's just that's the poverty cycle. And you guys are really trying to break that through feeding them, education, and then developing them. And it really just sounds like Transforming Futures is where your heart's at, is you're really trying to help kids that were born into a situation that they did not choose, right? They don't have hardly any opportunity, and whether they're extreme poverty or they're born into an orphanage without any family relationships. And it's just, life is really hard, right? And you guys are really trying to step in and really help bring opportunities to these kids. And that's amazing. So I know that I'm behind you, and if you guys are tuning in, again, Transforming Futures is a young organization. I mean, just take it back. And I remember when I was 2 years into my business, it's hard, right? You're just trying to get things going. It's like pushing this huge merry-go-round with a bunch of kids on it, and it's hard to get going. But once it gets going, you know, it goes, right? And so I would just recommend reach out and check out transformingfutures.org on their website. And how can people help, right? If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or just anyone, what are some opportunities for us to help? And the reason why I want to really point that out is a lot of people want to help. They just don't really know what to do. They don't really have the time to really look into helping. And, you know, and that's just where we kind of get stuck. So we just don't do anything. And sometimes we need like a blueprint or someone really to tell us, hey, go here, or whatever. So if someone's tuning in, what's a way that we can help?
Thank you, Brett, and thank you for your support, because you support Transforming Futures, and that speaks a lot about you and where your heart is at. I think there's many ways to support children that are living in poverty, and Transforming Futures is one of those options. It costs us $10 a month to feed one kid for a month, right? So just $10. With $100, you can feed 10 children. You know, so you can do that if you would like to help us. We really need, as business people, you know, we need a monthly revenue to continue paying our expenses and to have that cash flow to really help us meet all the needs that we have. So if you become a monthly sponsor for Transforming Futures, that's great for us. But if you want to come, I will really encourage you to come on a quick trip. It's basically a 3-day trip where you just, it's from a Thursday to a Sunday, so you can be back at work on Monday, and just experience in a very short amount of time everything that we're doing. I mean, it's intense days, hard working days, but that helps us to really continue our work and just to raise awareness. Just this opportunity that you are allowing me, Brett, if anyone else has that platform to allow me to share Transforming Futures. You know, as business people, you know, a lot of people that they just, like I said, when we were in Florida, I just saw everybody, very successful people, but they just want to do something more that is not just about them, right? And I think it was very inspiring to me. And I think for a lot of business people that are listening to us today, they can do the same. They can go to our website, transferringfutures.org. They can come on a mission trip. They can become a monthly sponsor. They can allow us to connect with new people and share what we're doing as an organization and how we're measuring our success, you know, how we're doing everything that we're doing. And I would say I have an amazing board. All of them are very successful business people too. And their heart is there, not just the passion, right? Because that's one stage, but then the commitment and the consistency, which is important in nonprofits, right? Because a lot of people have the passion and they just want to do something, but if they're not committed and if they're not consistent, then it doesn't work for nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And so I have an amazing board that is always supporting, you know, everything that is related to helping children. And you can go actually in our website and you can see your board members and see that we really want to make the difference in our country. And in my country, I get the privilege to do that.
That's awesome. Well, check that out, guys. And I know that I've been to Guatemala, and they just got back from a quick trip, and they're going to be doing more quick trips here in the coming months or coming years. So if you're interested in that, reach out to the transformingfutures.org. Reach out to myself too, and I can connect to you as well. And we might be planning some trips coming up as well. So really looking forward to that. And I think it is something just to experience. You don't want to go on these trips for yourself, I guess, for the wrong reasons. A lot of people want to go and they want to, feel something, and just to see, right? But I do encourage you. Seeing it is different than just hearing about it on this video, right? Something happens to you, you don't know what God's going to do in your life while you're over there. The Holy Spirit does show up, and I would say that it's just amazing. It's just something I really can't explain. I think you really do have to experience it. So do yourself a favor and, book a quick trip. I think you won't regret it. Pablo, so before we just kind of wrap up this show, you really talked about purpose, and I really just want to kind of hit home on that because, again, there's a lot of everybody out there wants to live their purpose, right? There's the book, The Purpose-Driven Life. And if you could ask me, like, Brett, would you rather have $1 million over here or live the rest of your life living out your purpose? There's really there's just no comparison. I think a lot of people really would say that same thing, right? They don't want to do something they're not meant to do that doesn't fulfill them, make them come alive. They really want to live their life with that. And you obviously seem like you have found that. So what are some ways that you would just talk to the business owner, entrepreneur out there about, how do you go about doing that? That might be a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a big question, I would say. I think everybody has their own journey. But one of the things, when I was going to very wise people on what I should be doing, if I should, go and start transferring futures or stay where I was doing, was that, one person told me, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added into your life. So the things that we seek for every day, it's almost like God puts it upside down, right? And he wants us the other way around completely. Those things that this world is not actually after anymore, right? Everybody's after money, success, and those are great things. But God almost puts it in the other side, and he's like, okay, go serve others. Go do something that is beyond yourself. And if what you're doing right now goes beyond yourself, there's legacy in that. If what you're doing right now actually impacts positive other people, then it's great. It's part of the purpose, right? But I think it's a very personal journey, and everybody in their own time. But I would say just hang out with people that are already doing what they're supposed to be doing in life, because that really inspires you to kind of build your own trust in saying, okay, God has my story. I have my own story too. And I can do things to step into my purpose. And I don't completely feel like I fulfill my purpose. Like I'm just starting. This is just the beginning. And God might have more challenges for me later on in life, where he wants me in another place or where he wants me to do something else. But it's just about, knowing what you're supposed to be doing today, right? Because life goes by so fast, right? So if you're always postponing this thing, which I thought about, I was like, maybe I'll just work for another year and then I'll see how things are, and maybe I'll jump into that. But the time is today, right? And we always worry so much about the future and what's going to happen, and we really overrate the future when we can just do something today, right? And if that means leaving a place, going into a new place, that's great. If it means helping more people, for business people, they want to support other organizations or transforming futures. If that's what it means, it's today, really. And I think that was very confronting to me, right? Because I thought about it in my process. Maybe I'll do it next year. And God's like, but it's today. It's today when you have to live your purpose, not tomorrow, not next year. It's today. And that really confronted me. I was like, okay.
Let's
Because
go.
what's the thing about it? The thing about it for me was I have to rely everything on God. And that was losing control,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, but that means I have to come to you every day for guidance.
Depend
I
upon
mean,
you. Yeah.
I have to depend on you every day. And he's like, yeah, and that's part of the purpose, right? And I'm like,
Wow.
oh, wow, that's really stretching me, right? I'm like, okay, if that's what you want, then I'll do it. And I think it's been the best decision of my life. I would say that without a question. It's been the best decision of my life so far. So
Amen.
far, right? Because I'm still pretty young.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I know John Maxwell, I love one of his quotes, and he says, once you've tasted significance, success will never be enough. And I think he really goes on to say, success, it can be very selfish, but significance has to be about others, right? And I think that's the world that what we're talking about, and that's what I love talking about, guys, is that success is great, right? I love business and entrepreneurship and making money and things like that. But there comes a point where, you're going to reach a point in your life that you do want to go beyond that. You want to go beyond into the significance, the purpose world, and, to make a difference, to make an impact. And this is where Transforming Futures lives. And you can also be a part of that. Maybe it's Transforming Futures. Maybe it's an organization in your own community, in your own backyard. There's so many people out there hurting that need help. And so I would just say, start walking, right? And whatever, God lays on your heart, makes you fulfilled and come alive during this season of your life, I would just say explore it and just see what God does with it. Pablo, what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I'm not a dad yet, but I think in the same way my mom, I think I'm part of her legacy of just serving others. If my children can serve others in the same way I do it, in the same passion I do it, I think that's just that simple fact for me will be like great. Like it is great. I was being a good father because I see a lot of children living in extreme poverty, orphans, and they don't have good fathers. And so to me, legacy means being present with my family, despite not having it right now. But having my children serve others, thinking about others before themselves. And then for me, legacy is transforming futures, really, because it's going to go beyond me. Like, it's not going to be limited to my capacity. It's not going to be limited to my age. To me, transforming futures is legacy because it's not about you at all. I mean, even when you're serving others, it's not about you. And transforming futures is the vehicle God has given us to bless others. So if transforming futures continues to bless others, even without me, that's my legacy. And then with that, I'm done. I mean, I don't need anything else. It's what I was supposed to be doing, and I know that's the fact that God put me to do that. So that's how I would describe my legacy.
That's awesome, man. Well, Pablo, thank you so much. It has been a blast on today's show, and I know I've gotten so much just out of just this episode and your organization, Transforming Futures, and I know that I really desire to be a part of whatever you guys are doing, and hopefully I can continue to be a part of that. And if you're tuning in to this show and you want to be a part of Transforming Futures, go to their website, transformingfutures.org. Check out a couple of videos on their website. Now, I know they're always constantly coming out with content and telling stories about what's going on. And I mean, I just wish you the best. I know that you guys are going to do amazing things and continue to serve people and be the hands and feet of Christ. And appreciate being on the show, Pablo. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate the invitation and really all your support to Transforming Futures. And thank you to the audience that was there. I appreciate you taking the time to get to know more about Transforming Futures. If you ever come to Guatemala, I'll be here ready to take you on an amazing experience just to serve others, really. So thank you again, Brett. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Pablo. Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.